And
Live on YouTube, and I've started the webinar. Begin, sir.
fantastic. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We have this parking committee that allows us to meet once a month. We are preparing for a snowstorm tomorrow, so we'll have several things on our agenda to get to. And the fact that we have Mary Ann with us, Art with us, Trustee Snaden, and of course, our parking administrator, Kevin Wood, is here. I'm Dom Famularo. And anyone else that joins us, we ask you all to make comments and join us for any attentive personal discussions you have regarding parking. But let's begin with our agenda and start on this day of February 17th, 2021.
Okay, before we do that, some people have forgotten this, and I thought it'd just be a quick way to show people that the village is lucky enough to have this. And we got a few people looking in, so why not show it, okay? Real quick. So those of you that got on the meeting early saw it. Don't forget, we have this beautiful earth cam, and I had to show you the sunset. Those that are on the meeting, it was a little bit brighter before, but welcome everyone. We'll start.
Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful. Okay, we have Art. I'm going to bring you in now, okay? We're getting Art's audio correct. Hello, Art, can you hear us?
Let's see. Art has.
Now, how does that sound?
It sounds
Does that
great.
sound good now?
Much better.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so you're in. All right, so we'll start with the agenda. The first thing I wanted to do is bring our planning head, if you will, Allison Lapointe. We want to get her in and out as soon as we can because Allison has to attend another meeting. Everybody mute, please, as I bring Allison in.
One, two, testing 1, 2. Allison, you there?
Hey guys, how are you?
There she is.
I'm getting there one step at a time.
There it is.
Hi everyone. Hi Dom. It's been too long. How are you? Hi Art.
We are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you a part of this meeting. Thank you, Allison.
What's doing?
Okay. Everything's great. I just want to make one note on a technical basis. Art, since you're now connected with the cell phone, your mute and unmute will be solely by the phone itself. I don't have that ability to mute you. So we thought we'd have you on, Allison, for 2 or 3 reasons. One is just to generally talk to the parking committee about what it is you do up there a little bit, and a little bit about Uptown as it relates to little bit, because I know this is said at so many different other meetings, what's going on and what we possibly could expect in the future of parking for Uptown. And then we'll go into some items where we may need your expertise. How's that sound?
Sounds great. I will not bore you with too much of what we do up in our offices because there's a lot of it, and really no one wants to spend their Wednesday evening going through all of that. But as it mostly pertains, I think, to the parking committee, you'd be most interested in the planning process and planning staff's interactions with the planning board. So we have the planning board is set forth by the village to make all their determinations based upon site plan and subdivision. And that's really where parking comes into things, because they're required to follow what's the codified parking calculations that we have, which are also set forth in our comprehensive plan update, I believe the 2030 comprehensive plan update. So that's currently what we do. On occasion, if we see things that might need tweaking or might need work, we'll bring those items to the Board of Trustees for discussion and work with the planning board to come up with those things. We haven't done one of those in a while, though I know there's some discussions going right now that we might need to take another look at some of our Uptown parking calculations to help encourage a little more development up there. As of right now, where we are, we have just finished, I believe the plans were signed today. The final site plan update for Port Jefferson Crossing, which is the old Bada Bing property. We're hoping to be in the position to be issuing building permits in the next week or so. And once that gets done, we could see groundbreaking there in another matter of months. They have some more technical things to get under their belts and out of the way, but we could see wrecking crews there, come mid-springtime. Beyond that, there is a new application that is just beginning to go through the planning process. It's been introduced to the planning board and some initial planning feedback has been given at the old Lobster House location. Again, that one is still in the preliminary region. We haven't set public hearing dates. There's some more work the applicant's doing on that application. And from a parking perspective, what we're seeing with these applications are applicants are largely looking to be able to provide the apartment parking that they need, but wish to pile up payment in lieu of parking, the commercial aspects of their projects. Much of this is based upon the size of the lot. There's only so many, when you're building property line to property line, there's only so much space you have. And as you guys all know very well, once you start calculating for drive aisles and egress, you lose parking spaces very, very quickly. And in the instances we're dealing with planning, you lose those parking spaces even faster when you then have to put a structure on top of it. Because now you're talking about structural members cutting through where spaces would normally go if it was simply a grade level parking lot. So that's largely what we're seeing from a planning perspective. There have been one or two requests for a single apartment spot here or there being piled up. The planning board hasn't been terribly comfortable with that thus far and tend to send that applicant back to the drawing board and say, find the spot or lose the unit. But thus far, the planning board has had some comfort, seeing as we are not terribly far down the line with our uptown redevelopment, with pile-upping the commercial spaces. That said, there have been some conversations for particularly the west side of Main Street, where we have particularly narrow lots, shallow lots, that there may be some discussion about trying to figure out what other ways we can help developers provide an adequate parking so they have a successful plan, but also a plan that would allow them to actually make a profit. We always have to remember, as much as we work really hard to make sure that our applicants are providing the village with the best value, there actually has to be a monetary value. They're not doing this for fun. They are actually doing this as part of the business. So that's where we are. There really hasn't been any specifics. We had a meeting last Friday, where it was just, trying to kick around some ideas of, what are we hearing from applicants? What are we hearing from the community? What may work, what may not work in very, very general terms, but we're certainly not a place where anyone's putting pen to paper and making decisions to jump off from there. So that's kind of where we are with Uptown. We hope to see more applications soon, but one bite at a time.
Fantastic. Mary Ann, you had a question?
No.
Okay. Allison, we with the Lobster House, can you let us know who the developers are that are involved?
Certainly, that's the Gita Group.
So they're doing the Lobster House, and who's doing Bada Bing, the old that place?
That's a company called Conifer. So the Bada Bing property is going to be 100% obtainable housing, affordable housing, and that's being handled by the Conifer Group. That's what their entire business model is. So that is large. Both of the projects are largely residential with smaller commercial components. The other thing we're seeing, I'm sorry, go ahead, Don.
Gito is very understanding about how they built and the design of the apartments up there so far. So there'll be underground parking?
The Gito project, so the Lobster House, the former Lobster House property, the Gito project is partially below the building and partially grade parking. So because of where the sewage treatment lines are, the sewer lines are, only one of their lots qualifies to hook into the sewer system. So because of that, they can't put any of their building on the remaining two lots towards Thorn, or else there's a pretty significant buy-in to the sewer district that's required. So the portion that's covered with building will have parking beneath. The other two lots, as you head towards Thorn, will be grade parking.
Fantastic. And the lot that is behind the Lobster House, that is just an empty lot. Do we have any idea of what's happening with that?
As of right now, my understanding is nothing. That property is owned by the Wayback Incorporated, which owns the building right to the north of it as you're going downhill. There had been site plans submitted, I think maybe 7 years ago, with the idea of expanding the current building. I think that's the corner of High Street and Main Street, into that area. but the project ended up being abandoned by the applicant. There was some difficulty with accessing it. They wanted to use the existing curb cut, which, as we know, kind of tricky in that location. And then I think at some point the applicant decided that the project just wasn't worth it for moving forward.
Interesting. So that could not be talked about as far as using any kind of a parking, even a temporary parking area in that area. I mean,
It is a privately owned lot. And the other thing that's very tricky is the enormous grade change. There's a pretty significant grade change, because it was something we had brought to the GIDO group saying, hey, you know, this lot has come up before, but it seems that the property owner isn't currently interested in developing it. But when they were looking at it, it really would only be useful if they were doing multiple level parking below. And as you all know quite well, that is a very, very expensive prospect. So it wasn't something that they were particularly keen on at that time.
Okay. Fantastic. Boy, thank you so much. So you figure by mid-spring or early spring that we could see some action up there?
That is what we're expecting. Yes, there's some utility work that has to get done first. All the not interesting stuff has to get handled before we actually get to see them break ground and start getting vertical.
What about the buildings that are on the corner of North Country and Main Street across from the Lobster House?
I haven't seen anything on those lots in a while. I think about 4 years ago, a proposal, a very, very, very sketch proposal came through at the idea of putting like a senior living facility or a nursing home facility on those lots there. But under our comp plan and our code, we require mixed use. So you have to have a residential component and a commercial component, partially in an effort to encourage walkability, trying to keep us more transit oriented, not just car oriented, but multiple transit oriented. So therefore having a commercial component so you can have a bodega or a grocery store or, you know, locally, so people don't have to have as many vehicles. And so when you're talking to larger corporate entities, like a larger nursing home facility, they're not really keen at having a commercial component because they're not structured to manage that kind of use. So that one we said, you know, interesting idea, but I don't know that it's going to work in that space under what our comp plan requires. But as of right now, I haven't seen anything come across our desks.
Fantastic. One more question. When you make the right on Perry Street, traveling north over the railroad tracks, there's a really dilapidated house that is back there. And it seems like it's just abandoned and rotting away. Do we know the
Do you mean east on Perry?
Yes, east on Perry. When you make a right.
That the smaller house on the left?
Yes, just
Yes.
behind that first building. Is there anything happening with that? Is that something where any builders are interested in, or is that a lot that could be additional parking?
So that lot, I wouldn't expect that. I wouldn't expect any of the properties on Main Street or even just between Main Street and the next street back to be just accessory grade parking. The lot depths are not significant enough that to do just an accessory grade parking provides much use or even, and on top of that, profit. There have been applications, again, sketch applications for that lot cobbled together with not the Safe Harbor title, which is right on the corner, but everything between Safe Harbor title and Tara's is actually, I believe, in single ownership. So there have been some kind of open discussions. We did see a couple of very, very sketch plans, again, I think about 3 years ago for that. But again, the issue, the trick we keep getting into is that once you get on these shallower lots, it becomes more and more difficult to provide the parking for the density that you'd need to put in order to support a project on those sites. So there have been some discussions, but I would be very, very surprised if I found anybody in the Uptown area who would be comfortable with simply creating grade level parking as a business model.
When I think about it on what we did at Barnum, where we purchased that house and demoed it, I mean, if it's just sitting there and doing nothing, is it something worthwhile for the town or the parking to purchase, put a temporary parking lot there until a developer comes back to negotiate the area?
Well, I'd start with, we'd have to make sure we have the funds to do that, because to move forward, I mean, it is in our blight zone. We do have eminent domain authority in that area. when it comes to putting in temporary parking at this time, what we're seeing up there is that a temporary parking lot is not necessary. We're like we've got parking spaces to spare now. Hopefully this starts changing as we start developing more and more up there. But to have it simply go in, just to simply have a temporary parking lot at this time, I don't see a planning need for that. I can certainly agree that we have a significantly dilapidated building in that location, and we certainly need to see something happen there. Yeah. But to go through the expense and efforts for putting in just a temporary parking lot, I mean, it would be better served just to go through a condemnation and force it to be knocked down and keep it on the tax rolls at this time.
How do we get that forced to be knocked down?
So we do have.
Dom, Allie, can I jump in real quick?
Please do.
I can tell you that Richard Harris has been in contact with the owner of the property and has been citing him with multiple violations. So we are in the process of heading in the direction that you all are speaking of, whether it be a condemnation and a takedown or an eminent domain in some way.
So thank you, Trustee Snaden. Dom, I want to be respectful to Allison's time. She has maybe 7 minutes left, and I know there's some questions from the attendees. I just wanted Allison first to reiterate that, first of all, to back up the fact that, for example, we have Texaco parking lot, which is 80 to 90% empty as we speak, as well as the LIRR. So the other question, or the thing that I'd like you to reiterate, is the village-owned lots that are either in place now or planned. It's Texaco plus one or two others, right? And that's it. Am I correct?
Yes. So we have the Texaco lot. We have what we currently call the Perry Street lot, which is also the Long Island Railroad lot. And part of the Conifer project is also, so we're going to be installing Station Street, which is going to make a large change in our traffic backing up across the grade crossing at the railroad. But part of that is also the realignment of Highlands Boulevard. So that way Station Street and Highlands Boulevard meet rather than being kind of catty cornered. When they're doing that, there's another phase to that plan, which does provide for additionally, what we're calling parking nodes. On either side of the newly realigned Highlands Boulevard, we do have the opportunity, and we do have, I believe, some early engineering designs, certainly not even like at an 80% plan, I don't believe, but early engineering designs for putting parking spaces in those nodes, which can be phased in at a later date. So as we continue to move along, and as we're allowing some applicants to pile up, we actually do have an opportunity up there where we could, on village lands, then provide additional parking just adjacent to the uptown area.
Thank you. Moving right along, we had a hand raised by Barbara Ransom, and she is in the room as we speak. Anybody else, if you do have a question for Allison, getting through this first phase of our meeting, please just raise your hand. Barbara, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Barbara.
Hey, guys. Hi, Allison. Start my video. Okay, so
there you are.
There we are. So my question is specifically with parking. Currently in our code, and I just need to get better clarification. The formula that we use for outdoor dining is 15 square feet per seat. So it's just simple math. So if you get 10 seats, 15 square feet, you need 150 square feet. Is that how it works? I mean, how do we apply that formula if we're going to move forward with providing additional outdoor dining for potentially this season?
So I'll start with saying I'm not the person who's been working with the outdoor dining this season or last season.
I'm not suggesting you are, but I'm referring specifically to what's in the code now.
So what I'm saying is that my general understanding is that under the executive orders that have been set forth by the governor, it gives the village the ability to make adjustments to the code in these COVID times. I'm sorry, not make adjustments to the code, but make adjustments to whether or not they're going to enforce certain portions of the code through executive order. So again, without looking at an application before me until I'm telling you, okay, this is how many parking spaces would either have to be made available or have access to, I really can't answer your question in a vacuum.
Are we going to reflect back to what's in our existing code now for the future, or are we going to possibly be considering new guidelines temporarily possible for the 2021 season because we're still in COVID.
Again, I'm not.
Barbara, perhaps I can help out. This is Richard.
Oh,
Wait,
hi,
Rich,
Rich.
Rich.
Here's Rich.
Good. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
Hi, Rich. How are you? Let's do this, please, if you don't mind, since Allison has 2 minutes left. If there's anybody else that has a comment or question for what Allison does cover, let's do that first, and then we'll go to Rich. Any hands raised? Looking once, looking twice. Art, please speak into your phone.
Last question, Allison.
Hi, Art. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I miss your dad very much.
Well, he's warmer than the rest of us, so.
Yes. With respect to downtown, 4 years ago when we redid the sidewalks, there was a plan for the east side of Main Street to extend the sidewalk prospectively. I'm not sure if it was approved by the DOT and not executed. Is this something we can still revisit, and is this something you might recommend or not?
So again, based on my recollection on that, part of what happened with that project, even though I believe we did have DOT sign off, is that we had some DOT funding issues. That my recollection is that the funding was only going to go as far towards the buildings as was actually DOT controlled, and then the DOT was going to require us to saw cut the remainder of the sidewalk, which might be privately owned, and so because that would be horrifically ugly. That portion of the project, with my recollection, was abandoned for just redoing the sidewalks. But again, as I also recollect, I believe when they were installing the sidewalks, there was a saw cut a little deeper into the roadway that if somewhere down the line the village had the funding, they would be able to move forward with that portion of the project. I don't believe it was a plan to have it, I believe the saw cut's only about 2 feet further into the roadway. Again, it's been a number of years, so don't take this totally to the bank. That's just my recollection on it. And I believe part of that project was also to underground all the power lines along Main Street.
We didn't have
But
enough
again,
money.
thank you, Barbara. Barbara's correct. The expense of doing that undergrounding, not just from the municipal perspective, but then the reconnection perspective. Like once you disconnect your electric, you have to then pay to have it reconnected. It became too cumbersome, and therefore it did not move forward. Whether or not that's something that's feasible to be looked at in the future, or if there's any grants for that in the future, that I can't answer.
You covered it beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. I got you out on time, right?
You nailed it.
All right. Thanks again. We
All right,
really
team.
appreciate it. We'll be in
Have a
touch.
great night. Take care.
Take care. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. Barbara Ransom, you were having some questions that I think Richard Harris could answer.
Barbara, you were getting back to the outdoor dining. Well, first, I don't know if that's really what we should be talking about in the parking committee right now. That's more a board of trustees issue.
Well, I think that is something to discuss, because part of the potential of outdoor dining is these parklets, which was going to be considered taking over parking spots and also using them for other areas to allow parking areas. So I'm just trying to understand what guidelines are we kind of coming up with here.
Right now, we're still seeing how many people are interested in it and what can be done logistically. Right? Like I told you offline, we're getting permission, or trying to get permission from the state in order to use parking spaces if necessary on Main Street, which is a state route. And then it's going to be up to individual business owners. If they want to do it, we're going to look at it a case-by-case basis. Again, we're right now, as far as guidelines and how we're going to handle it, yes, we have the normal guidelines that are followed for regular outdoor dining, but the COVID dining is different. As you know, we had our regular outdoor dining permits and the ones for the pandemic. We're still in the pandemic. The way I'm operating and the village is operating is we're going to do everything we can for any business in town while we're still at this. As far as the rules, the mayor has authority under the emergency orders to do what needs to be done. We don't have to follow those guidelines. So we're trying to do what we can for each business. As you know, our village is not set up where every business has the same amount of space. So we're working with each one of them. I've spoken to a number of different restaurants already, trying to see what will work and what won't work. There's going to be probably a different structure as far as how we're going to be financing it, for what payments will be made by the restaurants. and what's available. Some restaurants had a tremendous amount of space. Some had very, very little. We're trying to work as best we can. As far as the parking spaces, that's just one option that we want to have on the table. So if we need to use one or two here or there for certain restaurants, we'll use it. For the most part, we didn't need to use a lot of it last time. We'd shut down Wind Lane. I don't think we're going to be doing that this year. Some of the restaurants, as you know, they have very little areas to have outdoor dining. Some have a plethora. The steam room, they got plenty of outdoor dining over there.
You already have outdoor dining.
Right. Yeah. So they don't need it.
They're
Yes.
done.
And I don't want to get too far as far as why we do this, but the restaurants, they need space in order to operate. They're at 50% capacity. That's where we're at now. So we try to give capacity for them.
But I think the recommendations you have received from our Chamber of Commerce and from 3 other members individually have specifically said they're not in favor of the parklets to be on Main Street because it's going to be taking up parking and more importantly, we don't feel there's a safety issue here. So I'm a little distressed that we're going to continue trying to go and get permission from the Department of New York State to have parklets on Main Street. It really doesn't make sense to many of us. Certainly maybe using these barriers in areas in existing parking lots like behind Port Jeff Bistro or Burritos, if in fact we want to take some parking spots so that there can be outdoor dining, but it doesn't make sense, Rich. So
Barbara, I understand that you're distressed, and yes, I got 4 emails that were against it from you, the 2 folks over at the Frigate, and the gentleman that owns Lobster House.
right.
Every other response from every restaurateur that I reached out was in favor of it.
But they don't
So
have their
that is-
businesses on Main Street, Rich. I mean, their businesses, their restaurants aren't really on Main Street.
Barbara, I got plenty of emails from lots of restaurants on Main Street too. Right, they were sent to me. That's where I try to get permission, to try to work through it individually and have an option on the table because we're trying to give everything we possibly can to the restaurants. All right, that's why we're getting this permission. Then we're going to work through it piece by piece, just like we do for every outdoor dining application.
So you're going to, so the plan of action is that you're going to take each application on its own merit and work from there for
Yes.
each restaurant?
Yes.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anything, Rich, because number 2 actually was outside dining plans. Is anything that wasn't just discussed that you wanted to mention at this point? I thought it was covered, but I'm giving you the.
No, I think we covered it. And I think the other thing that Barbara wanted to discuss was about half-hour parking on Main Street also.
We can
Was
go
the
into
next
that.
one?
We can go into that. That's
So you
number
think-
4. Yeah.
I think that's more you than me, Kevin.
Well, I will say this. I have a poll that's going to come up at some point in this meeting because right now, well, let's just say this to those that are watching. It's 1 hour right now on Main Street from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I believe that used to be 2 hours at one point. It's 1 hour now. During COVID, during the heights of COVID, I should say, we had that go to blue sign, which said curbside pickup only. So I'm just giving some people some history here. There's been some thought process to give less time on Main Street. And I personally will say that if that did happen, I would like to see the inventory still stay as it is at night, which is longer time periods for people to spend time in the village. There's also been talk about metering Main Street, which is not happening this season. So I guess we'll just open it to the floor on that discussion. Trustee Snaden, if you're around, I'd like to hear from you on that. Or Barb, or anyone else.
Well, I think we're in support of the half an hour parking on Main Street, maybe from 10 o'clock to 7 p.m. and then having not restricted after 7 p.m. since a lot of the retailers are not going to be open. And the concern is that we want to have people to be able to get in and out of these businesses and pick up and get deliveries being taken. If people need more time to spend in the village, they should go to the municipal lots, period. You want to keep Main Street.
Except when there's no room in the municipal.
Sorry?
Except when there's no room in the municipal lots.
What do you mean, except when there's no room in the municipal lots?
Like June, July, and August, when there's actually circling.
Well, there's going to be circling on Main Street too, Kev.
Hence my statement about
You know,
inventory.
I mean, it's because we don't have enough parking.
Right.
But the my point is that we should have more accessibility for in and out parking, half an hour for on Main Street specifically. And everybody else should be flipped into the lots.
Okay, I'll put that poll up later. I think that'll shed some light post-meeting. Dom, if you want to read through your agenda points, we kind of went through number 4. I'd love to hear from Art Epp, who has been very patient. We sorry about last week, by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
This has gone ahead one more week. I know Art wanted to speak about something I think we'd all be interested in. Art, are you ready to speak about that?
Okay, I'm going to speak on my phone so I don't get reverb. I have to.
Are you
mute the
watching?
laptop.
Are you watching YouTube on the laptop?
Yes.
Turn the YouTube volume all the way down, and/or just turn YouTube off. You won't need it.
Okay. Am I
This
good
way
now?
We won't get any echo.
Yeah, just mute this.
Okay, I think I'm good now. Okay. I put my heart and soul into this because I had a week to prepare. I was going to speak extemporaneously last week, but I wrote down my notes, and this is personally very important to me, so I want to read my statement.
Okay.
I first want to thank everyone for affording me the opportunity to speak uninterrupted for 10 minutes. This means a great deal to me. Whether volunteers or village employees, we all engage in public service with the hope we can make a difference to make our community a bit better. To do no harm should be our first priority. My concern and commitment to do no harm is why I chose to speak tonight about the prospect of a one-way Arden Place. I believe a one-way Arden Place with traffic flowing eastbound is potentially dangerous. At the January 2020 Parking Committee meeting, attended by Maria Palmer, I spoke about dangerous driver behavior I have witnessed at the Arden East Main intersection. After the July 2020 parking meeting attended by Michael Schwarting, I fired off an email questioning the concept of a one-way Arden Place inbound from Main Street. Michael Schwarting had indicated that a 2004 traffic analysis performed by Port Jeff Village, when the Village Center and Park were underway, recommended a one-way Arden Place inbound from Main Street. Based upon 7 years of daily observation, I wholeheartedly disagree with this 2004 recommendation. Then finally, at last month's January 13th Parking Committee meeting, which I did not attend, Trustee Cassé, using idiomatic language that I'm particularly fond of, said, "I'm just going to throw some spaghetti against the wall here. What about a one-way Arden?" It was as if my concerns had been lost in the sauce of Rebecca's spaghetti. That's why I need to speak tonight, to restate my observations indelibly and with an exclamation point. And thank you, Rebecca. Okay, I'm going to share a bit here to drive the point home. I grew up in Garden City. 40 years ago, I sat in a car next to my father stopped at a railroad crossing, less than a mile from our home. With the gates down for minutes, with no train in sight, we observed people leaving their cars to look down the track. Finally, someone weaved through the down gates to cross the tracks. We were horrified. I remember my dad the next day on the phone advising someone at the Long Island Railroad that the Herrick's Road crossing was a disaster waiting to happen and action needed to be taken immediately. To the best of my recollection, the response was, "You're not the first person to express concern. Please rest assured we're monitoring the situation." Months later, on March 15th, 1982, the New York Times reported train kills 9 teenagers on Long Island as van goes past crossing gate. The one survivor, a 17-year-old girl, a daughter of a New York State senator, had her skull crushed in the accident. It was called the worst collision in decades at any of the railroad's 305 grade-level crossings. The Long Island Railroad president called the crash an appalling tragedy. A police lieutenant identified the dead as nice young kids. The New York Times reported many local residents had the same concerns as my father based upon their firsthand observations. Years later, the crossing was eliminated. Now, I don't know if Richard was in Charlottesville in 2008. You were? Okay. 3 miles from where I am now, in my home in Charlottesville, local residents were aware of a problem on northbound Route 29. Route 29 runs north-south through Virginia and can be considered a hilly version of Route 347 with a grassy median separating opposing traffic. The danger was created by a confluence of variables, primarily a stoplight at an intersection at the bottom of a hill, where traffic traveled at 55 miles an hour. On May 9, 2008, the Daily Progress reported that a 16-year-old girl, Sydney Akes, horrifically died at this intersection as she was hit by a tractor-trailer. She was a star soccer player who was driving to school at 7 in the morning. I remember this vividly because my mom, who was under hospice care in our home, died exactly a week later. 2 weeks thereafter, I attended local community meetings held by the Virginia Department of Transportation. I witnessed several people tearfully submit testimony to VDOT. It was heartbreaking. I sincerely hope and pray that none of us will ever have to attend a meeting like that, a meeting held in the aftermath of a tragedy. Local people have special knowledge about their immediate environments. This knowledge is priceless. Traffic studies are invaluable, but they are not infallible. After living morning, afternoon, and night on East Main Street for 300 days per year for 7 years, I have observed dangerous driver behavior as traffic travels eastbound on Arden to the Arden-East Main intersection. Specifically, I have repeatedly witnessed 2 distinct dangerous behaviors. One involves reckless rapid acceleration after making the right on East Main. This behavior subjects both pedestrians and motorists to unnecessary danger. The other maneuver I have repeatedly witnessed is a fast left on East Main, followed by a rapid right on Thompson Street. This is of great concern because it involves reckless motorist behavior in the immediate vicinity of the library. Both children and the elderly may be present at this location any afternoon. Per my observations, the motorists who perpetrate these dangerous behaviors are predominantly male. Their age varies. They typically drive V8 pickup trucks or exotic high-end sports cars. I've seen these behaviors both in the afternoon and after midnight. Previous suggestions to create a one-way Arden inbound from Maine would funnel more traffic to the problematic Arden-East Main intersection. I believe this would be inviting increased danger and a greater possibility of future tragedy. A one-way East Main would solve the issue regarding the dangerously fast right-hand turn. The best solution, however, is a one-way Arden with traffic flowing toward 112. the opposite direction of what has been suggested. This might be counterintuitive, but ultimately this might be what is safest. The last point I'd like to make, and it's incidental, but it's a new wrinkle. Ford Motor Company just said this year they're going to have a Mach-E Mustang. That car is advertised to be capable of doing 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Unlike a V8, which roars, or a turbocharged V4, which whines, that engine's not going to make any sound. As a public safety issue, electric cars are capable of accelerating faster than their internal combustion counterparts. When you can't hear it coming, it becomes so much more dangerous. So I thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to sort of open my heart and give you some personal history. But I live here and I know the specific area, and I don't ever want to see anyone harmed if I could provide information that could prevent it.
Thank you, Art. Thank you. You know, when we voted you to be part of the committee, we had no idea we were also getting an extraordinary storyteller speaker for us all to enjoy. That was extraordinary. You did some great preparation there. We totally appreciate it. We think a lot of what you're talking about is completely valid. Probably, if it was to go forward, would be more towards the Board of Trustees than the Parking Committee. But you have people out there that are certainly on the Board of Trustees. So we completely understand that. Dom, your thoughts, or anybody's thoughts on just the idea of the one-way art, and which has come up many times?
Yeah, I think, Art, this would be great if you presented this at a Board of Trustees meeting. I think this would be something that could be brought to the table of the Board of Trustees, and let them ponder this and let them think about what any possible suggestions could be, if there's even any thought to anything of a one-way either way on East Main or Arden.
Anybody else out there as attendees, raise your hand. Anybody else in the meeting that wants to weigh in on the possibility of having Arden one day be one way for other reasons? Could be economic reasons, could be egress or ingress into gap parking lot, as we still call it. Could be a lot of reasons why we opened the discussion up.
Great. Well, let's see what the Board of Trustees decides to do as far as if they open that discussion. And if they open that discussion, again, it would be great to have Art, you there, and several members from the Parking Committee to be there to take note and see exactly what their suggestions might be.
Good.
Thank you all for listening.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Barb, I know you have to leave in just in about 10 minutes. So is there anything that you wanted to speak about as far as Port Jeff Chamber input or anything like that?
Well, I'll speak to Mr. Harris off camera tomorrow, possibly. I am a little frustrated right now. So we already kind of briefly talked about the half-an-hour parking. I think the chamber would be in favor of half-an-hour parking on Main Street.
There's
what do you get there?
There's a poll there. So go ahead and answer it. Because I think that goes right to the heart of the possibilities. If everybody can see that, just answer what you would be most comfortable with on how much time would be allowed to park on Main Street. Again, right now, it's a 1 hour time, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Many of you know that enforcement doesn't come on till, I believe, 11 a.m. I might be, Richard, do you know when enforcement comes on?
10 o'clock, I think, in the morning. 10.
Okay. There's a few pages to that. It'd be interesting for us to all look at. I honestly don't know if this is going out to attendees, but some of them are on phones. But if you see it, please answer it as you continue to talk, Barbara.
No, I think I'm talked out about the outdoor dining. The chamber is in favor of outdoor dining. The letters that Rich you got, they were in favor of outdoor dining. We're extraordinarily concerned about the safety and putting parklets on Main Street. I think they could be used in other areas that would be more beneficial. I think we still need to have a sit down. I mean, maybe the agreement is that we just handle every application individually and there's not a specific guideline that is going to be consistent with everyone. It's just going to be a case by case review. I mean, we have outdoor dining already in Village now. Those areas that have private property I would think then the existing outdoor dining regulations would apply to them. Question, I don't know. The sticky wicket is when we start having to use public property and we're taking away parking spots. And I think we want some level of more control with that. Areas where we don't get jammed up. I think it's a wonderful thing. There are areas on East Main Street by Pasta and Toast where outdoor dining does fit. There's enough room. There wasn't really any difficulties. It's these areas where we're going into parking lots. I mean, we have to try to be consistent with everyone's needs as much as we can and be uniformed so that retailers don't get upset because they're not getting any special extra space for their business and bringing their items out on a sidewalk and having sidewalk sales all the time. You know, so I think we need more discussion. I think we need a sit down. I'd like that. I'd like to have collaborate with vested parties. We could do a walkabout, sure, why not? But we're going to be on top of high season before we can say on top of high season, and we just really need to get something in place. And maybe it should be only temporary for another year because we are still in a COVID land. But after that, I think we have to go back to set rules. I think we're all in favor. I think outdoor dining does add some ambiance to the village.
I agree, Barbara. I'm not going to be able to speak this week. I'm in training for the rest of the week, and we'll be shoveling out tomorrow as well.
Okay.
We'll hook up next week and we'll talk. Okay.
That would be nice. Thank you.
And thanks so much for your help, Barbara.
I like your puppy.
And I like yours.
All right. All right.
I had a question for Rich, and I'll send out a PDF tomorrow. I came across a feasibility study done in Alexandria regarding outdoor different modalities. That was fascinating.
Oh, really? Was about what putting it on into the main streets there?
Near the water, doing different things with outdoor dining, pedestrians, and car travel.
It might be
If
interesting.
you
Alexandria has a number of different areas. You have the waterfront, it's more of a walking area. Then you've got Old Town, which is a very small, congested area too. And then you've got the big, larger streets going up to the because the Mormon temple up there. So I'd like to see how they work that out.
But you know what? I'll send it to everybody tomorrow just to take a look through. It's about 40 pages, but the illustrations are fantastic.
They take up a lot of room. I hope the pictures.
Yeah, the
I'd like to
pictures are
see
good.
that. All right, by the intersection you were talking about were you talking about Rio Road and 29?
Oh no, I'm talking about, if you're familiar with Forest Lake South.
Yes. Yeah.
Ashford Boulevard.
A ways from the city proper, you mean?
Yes.
Yep.
We're talking about 3 miles from UVA. And what happened was I had traversed the roads and I realized there was a problem and locals knew. And what happened was VDOT, after the crash, immediately lowered the speed limit by 10 miles an hour. They incorporated flashing lights around warning signs. Then about 3 or 4 years later, they spent millions to take out the hill.
Right. Yeah.
So
They
we're
went to a lot of grade separated interchanges in that area over the past 10 years or so. So I won't get back into that. No one else wants to hear about our old town.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Art.
Rich, if you're good, I'm going to throw you back as an attendee. If you want to watch, fine. If you want to make popcorn, you can do that too.
That's fine. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Okay, Barb, I know you got to go, right?
I got 7 minutes.
Okay, hang out then.
I'm hanging out.
All right. You see the sharing of the poll results, Dominic? Do you see those?
Clearly, man, this is very interesting. This looks
Okay.
like
I mean, it's only it's a small sample, but 30 minutes on this one anyway. For sure. We could throw that around to a few of the merchants at some point.
If you want to, Kevin, if you want to like forward that to me, I can send it to the business community.
Sure.
See what I get.
Kathy Ann?
Kevin,
Yes.
I'd like to jump in for a second. Anybody
Please.
who's in favor of the 30-minute, what is the thinking behind the 30 minutes? What can you do in 30 minutes? I'll start by saying that I'm in favor of the 15 because that allows you to go in, get what you need and get out and turn over the spot. I don't understand the 30 minutes.
So if there's somebody in the attendee list that would like to come into the meeting, just raise your Zoom hand and you can answer that. Somebody that had answered 30 minutes. I did not participate in this because I gave the poll. Anybody that voted 30 minutes, if you want to, Richard Harris is coming back in. Come on, Rich.
So currently the time is 1 hour, correct?
1 hour.
Yes.
So I voted 30 minutes only for the fact that let's see exactly what happens within that 30 minutes since we're going to come back. I didn't want to make it too drastic of going down to 15 minutes, but 15 minutes would be the ultimate. But I think what happens in this village, as I have learned, is we have to move at a snail's pace in slow moments. So if we came down with 30 minutes and we're able to study that for several months, then if that worked out and we can cut it back to 15 minutes and have the cooperation from people to follow the signage, I think that would be the ultimate solution.
Yeah, Kathy, and also it's Barb. 15 minutes is tight. I mean, we could maybe do 15 minutes, but you could wait. You could be 15 minutes at Starbucks. The whole idea is that maybe you have two errands. If you have more than two, more than one errand on Main Street, you're going to need maybe more than 15 minutes. So I think conservatively 30 minutes is a reasonable amount of time, again, to keep people getting in and out of the spots.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it, by the way, just for what it's worth, I think that does make sense, 30 over 15. But I'm bringing in James Luciano, who's a business owner, prominent business owner, and a restaurant owner. So I think this input is valuable. James, you in here? Not yet.
What restaurant is that, Kevin?
Fort Jeff Lobster House.
Lobster House, thank you.
I brought him in.
Always sees a name. Oh, he's on mute.
Yep. Here he comes.
Can I chime in with my comment, then become a spectator again?
Yes, please.
I had voted for the 30 minutes because my experience is unlike me, my kids have hair that needs to get cut on a regular basis, and I'll take them both over to the men's room. 30 minutes is tight to get them both cut. An hour is great, but then again, after hearing what Trustee Snaden said, in that kind of situation, really, I should be going to the metered parking in the lots. So the shorter time period does actually make sense to me. It'd be more difficult for me, but it does make sense in the grand scheme of things, with 15 or 20 minutes even.
So one of the things that I was going to that I've been thinking about, and I've mentioned to Kevin, and maybe it's something we can explore if somebody else is on board with it, is making some spots on Main Street permanently a 15-minute, a 20-minute, 30-minute, whatever you guys decide. I was recommending the 15 minutes, and I have not gone out to count the spaces, but my thought was to take every, let's say, third space up and down Main Street and make that a permanent 30-minute spot. So in favor one business or another. We've had requests from businesses on Main Street to allow them to make a spot right directly in front of their business, 15 minutes for takeout only and pickup. But in order to do that and make it fair for everybody, you can't just pick the spot out in front of everybody's store. Not everybody has a spot directly in front of their front door. So that was my suggestion, was to take, go up one side and say every third spot or fourth spot, however the count comes out appropriately, to make those permanent, whether it be by color marking, signage, a combination of the two. So there is always spots that are constantly turning over on Main Street for the quick haircuts or the quick pick up your pizza and head out, kind of clientele. And then keep the other 1 hour parking, at the other spots for those people that do need the 1 hour because they're going to hit a couple different stores and run their errands. And I think that's a win-win for both retail, restaurant, and the different types of clientele you may have coming in.
Thank you, Trustee Snaden. James, welcome, please. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So what if we would make them 15-minute spots, but only start enforcing them after 30 minutes? I think to jump 2 steps down over a course of time is going to be confusing for people, but you could adjust it and see, like, 15 minutes is really what you should want to do. And then if they're not enforcing them until 30 minutes passed, I mean, then it's really doing the same thing without having to change the signs back and forth.
Not a bad idea.
As
I
long as
think whatever we do, it should be somewhat consistent for the whole Main Street. To have this spot being 15 minutes and this spot being a half an hour, I think policing, it's going to be a nightmare, and people are not going to follow the signs. You're going to get a lot of bad will. People are going to get tickets.
Well, no, it wasn't
But
about.
I think we have to be uniformed as much as possible, particularly on Main Street, for signage and also signage pollution.
No, I think you misunderstood, Barbara. In not 15 and 30, you would take a certain number of spots that would be permanently either 15 or 30, whatever we choose as a short-term pickup parking. Everything else remains 1 hour. That's what I was saying.
I don't think I'm confused, Kathy Ann.
Different color.
So but you're saying you're having mixed
You said
times
you didn't want
again,
it to be
right?
15 and 30.
15 and
Absolutely,
30.
because you need some spots that are.
Yeah, I did
No, I
understand
wouldn't
you.
mix the 15 and 30.
I did understand you correctly.
No, I would not. I would not mix the 15 and 30. That's not what I'm saying.
All right, now I am totally confused.
Right.
So you'd have one spot, repeat them, because you're
Okay.
saying 15 and 30.
No, all right. So I'm going to use the number of 15 because that's what I was originally talking about. So every third spot going up Main Street and down Main Street would be a 15-minute parking spot for pickup and takeout only. Every other spot remains at 1 hour.
Yeah, but so you do have mixed use. So yeah, I did understand it then.
Yes, it's mixed between 1 hour and 15. It's not
Yeah.
1 hour, 15 and 30. That's
Okay,
it. So
so-
there would be pickup only designated
Yeah.
spots, very similar to what we did over the summer. And we got very good feedback from business owners. In fact, many of them said they wanted to make that permanent.
Let's have less crosstalk and let's have just on-point opinions. It would be helpful here. We can crosstalk all we want offline. James, is there anything else that you had your hand raised about that you want to speak about? Anything else? I know we had had conversations of possible merchant permitting spots. If you want to
So,
talk about your opinion on that.
I was thinking mainly behind the buildings, but I know this is off Main Street, but the spots that are touching the buildings of all the businesses should really turn into metered spaces. I mean, it should turn into time spaces rather than metered spaces. We're having a lot of issues, especially behind the mall, for instance, where residents are coming and parking in these spots and not moving the cars for 2 and 3 days at a time. Or an employee that's also a resident will come and they'll park their car there at 10:30 in the morning, and that car sits there till 11 o'clock at night.
So I want to address this, and it's not something that's going to be fixed April 1st. By the way, that's when we're opening managed parking. When we institute LPR, license plate recognition, all these problems are going to be so much easier to manage. So that if we put up signage or make policy, and I agree completely with your policy, that an apartment dweller should not be parked, to be blunt, in front of your restaurant for 2 days. The enforcement officer will be able to shoot the plate, understand that that's a permitted resident, and then warn or ticket accordingly. That becomes a heck of a lot easier at that point, and that will come to us. So those plans are in place. I personally agree with your sentiment there. Can we do something before this season? Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be maybe possibly signed a little different. The only thing we've done, Marianne, I know you want to speak about this, is we've done the little circle E's, no employees, which I don't know how effective that's been, to be very honest. Marianne, I'm unmuting you. You got to unmute if you want to speak, Marianne.
Okay, in Patchogue, with the metered areas of parking, the row of parking spaces directly behind the restaurants is metered, but there's only a maximum amount of time that you can utilize that spot. And that's done so that employees wouldn't use the spot, and it would just be for the people that are coming into shop or using the restaurants. So couldn't we do something like that in certain areas, like right behind the mall, or even along Mill Creek where it's metered, or what, you know, is that you can only put a maximum amount of money in there? The
As
merchants aren't supposed to be parking there with their passes either, that if it's being enforced correctly. And the only other issue we would then have to deal with would be the residents.
Port Jefferson is very unique. We don't have this luxury of perimeter parking, right? The closest we've come to that is coming up this season, the Barnum parking lot, truly out of the perimeter of prime parking. We want to incentivize employees to park there. We can do that by making it half the price to park there. Beyond that, it's hard because every single spot besides Barnum is prime spot. It's all very walkable, with the exception of Barnum, which you could argue is still walkable, but it's less walkable.
But
So,
addressing James's issue behind the mall, the e-spots aren't there. And what was happening is merchants that had merchant passes that are parked, that are on the other side of Main Street, they were parking there, cutting through the mall, and then spending and leaving their car there all day.
Another point I want to bring up too is that there is all of our manholes for all our grease traps and sewage are in those spots. So having a time spot would, if there's an emergency or there's service that needs to be done, eliminates the need to have to get a tow truck or something like that. I mean, these cars parked there, how are we supposed to access our equipment that's underneath the ground?
very tough.
I mean, a time spot would eliminate that, because if they have a 1 hour parking or 2 hours, whatever you want to make it, 15 minutes, I mean, I don't care. But if you eliminate that, then we have access to those areas.
Tom, do you understand what James is saying?
I do very well. There's a couple different points. First of all, the fact that there's no charge for meters right now, people will park in spots and leave their cars there. We can't control that other than what Kevin is saying, by being able to track their license plate and being able to contact them to inform them that their car should be moved. Regarding employers that park in these spots, we have had this frustration, James, as long as I've been on this parking committee for 10 years. The disrespect that the employees have to take away customer spaces is absurd. There's a certain amount that we can do as a parking committee. That has to come from the leaders and the owners of these businesses to let their employees know that that is an unacceptable behavior. When you go to a lot of these, larger organizations, like when I go down to a Best Buy, when I see the people pull up at 10 o'clock in the morning to open at 11 o'clock, all the employees park the furthest lots of the parking spots away, so customers get priority. They then have to walk the distance of the entire parking lot to go to work. That is that's put out by the owners of Best Buy, and that has to be followed, or they get docked in pay. So this is a real leadership commitment that we have here, that the owners of these businesses have to let their employees know that that's just an unacceptable behavior. So putting an E with a line through it, we tried all that, nothing works. If we can, now as a parking committee, if we can give them a 50% discount to park in the Barnum lot, which we've just spent an incredible amount of money to do, which is not that far away, and it's all lit up. 11 o'clock at night, someone leaves work, 12 o'clock at night, it's all lit up. We spent $200,000 in proper lighting to light up the entire area. And if that is a concern, then someone from the business should walk that employee to their car and then come back. So we need to really work all of this in a way that can assist. We'll do whatever we can do legally from a parking committee to help these employees park and give these customers the prime, spots. But James, I feel your frustration.
Do you understand what a time space would do then? It would eliminate that, because then it doesn't matter if it's an employee or a resident, because after an hour, they would get a ticket.
So I guess the key thing is, Kevin, is that something that we can, implement with our code, that they can stick to that, if it was an hour time that they have to park it, is that something which we can implement through the machines and or through the parking mobile process?
So what you don't know possibly, Dom, is the background. Part of the background on this is I was just bringing back my experience from Allentown, where that parking authority had given certain businesses permitted spaces. And I'll give an example here. And I'm not raising the flag that I want this or don't want this, but it's my duty to bring to you what works in other areas. So it would go like this. The village would permit James one space in front of his restaurant for him to use exactly as he pleased, with the exception of, or the idea that would be no more than 10-minute parking, which that solves that problem, by the way. So if James wants a VIP to pull up to his restaurant, that's what James gets. If James wants a customer to pull up and get some fish and leave immediately within 10 minutes, that's what James gets. So it's James's permitted space from the village. I realize that not every village restaurant and or business could have this, but it's a possibility that it could happen in certain places. And in Allentown, where it does happen, it works wonderfully. So I'm putting it out there because most on the parking committee had not heard that concept. So it's for you to just learn about that concept.
Boy, then
Kevin,
I would suggest to implement that for any of the businesses that have parking literally lined up to their business. Let's put that into effect and test market and see how that can work within a season, and give it a shot. We're open to anything.
Kevin, how do you suggest enforcing that? How do you know that the person that came out of that car does not
So
to go to another store?
So all I can tell you is how it works in Allentown. The enforcement body there enforces it. They have some tools that we don't now have, electronic auto chalking, which we will have, which makes that job easier. But I mean, we're talking about a city that's 20 times the size of us, and they're doing it. They're doing it no problem. And I have no issue with us being able to do it. So that code enforcement officer riding by James's place, only using this as an example, auto chalking that, digitally chalking that vehicle, and seeing that within reason, a half hour later, that car's still there, that car gets a ticket on, even though it's James's permitted space. I don't think that's a lot of work. I don't think
So
that's.
you're enforcing the timing, but not that it's only for James's store.
Yes, but I go by the example that James has 4 spaces, or Bruce does, who's on the line, by the way. And but for the record, Bruce voted for 20 minutes on Main Street, so we're splitting hairs. But I just wanted to give that because I'm talking to Bruce on the side here because he's online on the phone. But I look to the example of the 4 spaces that Bruce has in front of the Lobster House, and I think James has some fraction of that. It doesn't actually matter, but I never see those spaces being violated. They're very respected. And then they're not even amazingly marked. There's one little sign. Imagine if we had these spaces yellow or greened or properly marked. I don't think you're going to get a lot of violation in that regard. I could tell you, I'm out in the lots a lot. That's my job. And I don't see a lot of violation of people parking where they shouldn't be parking, with the exception of I didn't see the sign, that kind of a thing. I think we'll be okay there.
You don't think that trying to give one space to certain businesses, like you might run out of, people might complain that they don't have enough, or like they didn't get one or something like that. You
know what? In this world, that's America. Yeah, of course we're going to get the complaints. He's got this. I fully expect that. But it's not possible.
If you took that whole back strip, not just by the mall, I'm talking that whole back parking strip, that anything that touches a building, and just made it into a 1 hour space, that would eliminate a lot of nonsense. And then the village could still do your electronic chalking and make their money accordingly, and then nobody has to police it. And it's not, okay, these spaces are just going to James and these spaces are just going to the pie or whatever,
You say that until somebody uses it for an hour and a half, and you would have liked that space to have been rotated 6 times. But I'd like this committee to take that under advisement.
My concern is just the residents parking in there for days at a time, or an employee parking there for 10 hours. I think with the time space, it doesn't matter how long you want to make it, a time space would eliminate that problem.
How many spaces are we talking about along that line, Kevin or James?
No more than 20, right?
I don't even think it's that many. I think it might be
That would be,
Oh.
I think 11, maybe 11.
yeah, that's behind the pie and then behind the Lobster House, right?
yes.
Well, does Behind the Pie don't they have their own spots? Isn't there some sections around there that they have their own spots that belong to their property?
Yes. And to the apartments.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna be cut and dry, but let's look at it tomorrow. Let's physically go look at, not tomorrow during the snowstorm, but as soon as like this weather lets up, let's look at it and let's reconvene. I'd like this committee to take, I think there's some great things that came out tonight. Really great things. So we'll look at all these things.
James, great point, and thank you for joining us here. This is exactly the feedback that we need when business owners and restaurant owners come by and inform us about some of their needs. I wish there was a restaurant committee that could have a unified voice that we could work together with. We don't have that, and that would be a great thing to have if that was at all possible to organize.
Or it can happen naturally.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, James. Mary Joy, I know you came on. You had a question, concern, or comment, if you can hear me.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, put your video
Hi.
up optionally if you'd like.
No, it's fine. Thank you. Well, just two things. As a business owner that is in my shop, 7 days a week through the summer and really anytime, if there's a popular question that's asked many times a day, I parked on Main Street. What's the time? How long do I have? How long can I stay there? And my response always has to be, it depends on where you are. Where are you on Main Street? It could be an hour. It could be, it may be 15 minutes. I don't know. And people don't look. And I really think that it would be important to make it uniform one way or another. And I do think that 30 minutes would do it. A customer would be able to either pick up or shop and be back to their car and move on.
So Mary Joy, good point. I will tell you, I don't know if Trustee Snaden's still on, but we definitely made that a big point last year to make it's truly 1 hour and only 1 hour. And it wasn't always that way on Main Street and East Main Street being 2 hours. So it's really easy to, spill at the tip of your tongue, so to speak, that it's 1 hour and 2 hour. And
Right.
I'm still here,
I
Kevin.
agree
Yeah,
on the
Mary
uniform.
Joy, that
Okay.
was one of the things that we had heard complaints about across the board. And in order to address that, that's what we did, is made it all 1 hour on Main Street, East Main 2 hours, in deference to the residents that live there. There's a lot of residents on East Main, and if they have guests, that's why we made that 2 hours. But all of Main is 1 hour.
Right. Okay. And then the other point, when you were discussing about having time spots that are up against the buildings and whatnot, I don't know for how many years, maybe Mary Ann, you would know, how long did the Village Way have that spot number 1 as a 15-minute spot?
Well, I can
It was a-
answer to that too. That they had to do because apparently that's their grease trap. And when the
Yeah.
Board of Health would come, and I guess they used to test it and inspect it, if there
Right.
was a vehicle there, they would not be able to do it.
To
And if they
James'
didn't
point.
have access to the grease trap, they would give the ticket to the Village Way.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they had that as a 15-minute
Okay.
spot.
Well, I don't know how often they came to test.
Oh, I don't know
or
either. I don't know
Or
either. But she
pump or
must
whatever,
have,
but I mean, I probably saw it maybe once because it was right outside of my shop.
yeah.
It was once every, I don't know, month or
Yeah,
2 months,
But
something like that.
I
But-
guess the way they solved it was making it a 15-minute spot all the time.
But that it was effective. People paid attention. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I can only stay 15 minutes. And they were
Yeah.
out of there.
Yeah.
It wasn't policed. People policed themselves because they
Yeah.
were afraid they were going to get ticketed. So it was effective. So
I will tell you that half the battle with, you're definitely making a good point. A lot of people get tickets on Mariners Way, the resident lot. And I don't think it's any coincidence. Those signs, I think, are 25 years old. And so we could do a better job at that. And I'll make a point of looking at that before parking opens. People really do not see old signs, and they tend to see, new signs. It's just true. It's yellow signs, if you will, or just signs that are just better at giving people information.
I can tell you that in attending the court sessions, that when somebody is being there for a ticket for parking in that resident lot on Mariners Way, 100% of the time that I have been there, they have said that they didn't see the sign, that the sign was very complicated. There's a lot of writing on it. I don't know if that's because it spells out the code or what it might be. It doesn't just say in big bold letters, residents only. And I talked to our prosecutor, Dara, about that, and she said, that could be something that you guys could change up in making them either different, more exact with the language, or putting one in front of every spot. Because what seems to happen is a smaller car, the signs at the entrances are large but very high up. And if you're in a smaller car and you're usually not looking up, you're looking ahead at where your spots are, you don't see that and you park and then you leave. And there are no other signs, directly in front of each parking spot. So I believe that, signage, a change of signage there would make a big difference. And then it would be, the prosecutor would then be less likely to reduce those tickets because it was a lot, more visible.
Good point.
Great.
All right, Dom, you want to continue?
I think, we've gone down pretty much our entire agenda here. Kevin,
I was just going to give some general updates. So as everybody knows, managed parking will open if the world doesn't come to an end or there's not too much snow, 4/1, right? April 1st, 2021. And same hours at this given time and same rates as last year. You've heard me say this before, the last month of 2020 parking, up to 55% of our parking sessions were done via QR code or NFC. That's definitely, the future is here. We will continue with that. We may go again with 2 or 3 less meters than we had last year. A good example is Baker's Alley, where we have 4 meters right next to each other. Why not turn one of those into a QR code kiosk? We will probably do that. That'll be better data for us. It's actually quicker. I hope everybody knows that someone can put a phone up to the front of the meter, the side of the meter, the back of the meter, and the other side of the meter. You can have 4 people parking at once instead of people fumbling for change and holding up a line 7, 8 deep. So there's practical reasons for going digital in this regard. The Board of Trustees just authorized a car counting system that I recommended, which I'm going to put up on the screen. Put out by a company called Parking Logics. This technology is actually simpler than some of the technology we looked at, which had to do with cameras. I really recommended this system because it's used in places like Disney and places that are counting cars all the time. I won't bore you with a lot of details, but basically it's 2 simple sensors, one on the way into Barnum, one on the way out. And then that's sent to a digital sign that'll be fronting Barnum Avenue, such that when you're exiting Salt Meadow parking lot coming from Rocket Ship Park, you will know exactly how many spaces are available in Barnum before you even get there. And that might sound like that's not a big deal, but I think it's going to be a big promotion just to let people know there's now additional parking for the first time, by the way, in 50 years in downtown Port Jefferson. The LED will be small. It'll be connected to one of our classic burgundy signs. It'll be green when there's spaces available. If you're looking at the lower left, if it is full, it will turn red and it'll say full. So it'll be the first, I think we'll be one of the first to have this system on Long Island. So another first for Port Jefferson. And I think it's practical, but it's a nice promotion for us to say, hey, we've got additional space for you. It's about all I have on updates.
Could you let us know, Kevin, when we think we will have the grand opening or the cutting of the ribbon of the Barnum lot?
Sure, absolutely. As soon as we can stand on that lot without standing in some snow.
So April 1st, when the parking opens up, I think we'll be clear of that by then, right?
Yeah, yeah, it should be.
Could we find a date maybe after the opening of the parking lot within that week?
Yeah, honestly, it's probably up to Suffolk County, Steve Malone's office, but we'll apprise you.
Boy, if we can be on top of that, it would be great if everybody was there and let everyone know the success of that lot and open it up and get a little play out of that. Maybe we can even have Channel 12 down there and get a little promotion out of that to promote the village. That would be great.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, I think if anybody has any final questions, I think we're pretty much good. We've done a pretty good, almost an hour and a half of session here, which is great to have. We can always see how important parking is in our village. It is equally frustrating as it is equally frustrating. So there really is no light at the end of the tunnel, unfortunately, with our parking here. We just have to keep on, we just keep on rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic here, man, guys. It's like there's not enough spaces, and we just keep on trying to shuffle ideas, but we're open to any idea.
Awesome, Dom. Thanks, everyone. Anybody else have any questions? I'll go one final round. Those on the attendee list, panelists. Otherwise, have a great night. Second Wednesday of the month is our meetings. Second Wednesday of our month. And we'll have them at portchef.com/virtual meetings.
Fantastic. Everyone, thank you so much for your time and effort. Kevin, thank you so much for keeping on top of this here. Trustee Snaden, thank you for your unending effort. And thank you all for being a part of this. And we'll touch base with you guys real soon.
Thanks, Tom.